Tamer started up again today. Well, it's day 2 towards the countdown of BT21 World Convergence's release. And we continue the Liberator trend as we cook up with a little bit of support that Puppets ended up getting. And well, before I crack into it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and share this around to help with the algorithm. And as always, let's get into this. And starting off, going over the egg deck. For me, it ends up being a 4-1 split between Structure Deck Kyaromon and EX8 Kokomon. As well, for the most part, both play into the semi-wide field aspect of the deck, with Kyaromon being my more preferred egg between the two, since it's more so a question of consistency, as for the most part, you are constantly swinging in while you do have a body on board. So, the Kiro ends up being the draw engine for the deck, for early, bringing that gradually gains you cards. Well, the X8 Coco here is an example of the secondary aspect of the deck that that gets supplemented following support, as it's another when attacking inheritable that triggers as long as there's another Digimon board, but as long as you have another Digimon board, with it dishing out a pretty much in most cases an additional minus 2000 DP that you could spread about on the board. Well, that's it for the egg deck. Now on to the rookie lineup. For the most part, ends up being a full host of Shumons, as Structure Deck Shu and EX7 Shu are still pretty much the core, as the Searcher of the deck and Archetypal Evolution reduction for the deck. And to back that up, I end up going for a full playset of Promo Shu, given that it ends up seeing some good use within the deck. Since on play, it ends up dishing out second -1 to one opposing Digimon, and grants a useful DP reduction inheritable that triggers when attacking. Though, for obviously, given that we're talking about Promo Shu here, other tech options, if you can't really acquire one, would still be the good old Structure Deck Pawn Chessmon Black, Pawn Chessmon White, and Structure Deck Junkmon for their utility options, with both Pawn Chessmons being, draw options that trigger differently, with Pawn Chessmon Black being the blocker that you could add to the deck, and then Junkmon for its obvious supplementary ability to protect any of your puppets on board with Decoy, as well as granting nifty barrier inheritable. Well, that's it for the rookie lineup. Now on to the level 4 lineup. Since, for the most part, it ends up being an adjusted variation from the last time, as it's now brought down EX7 Shushu down to 3, and then keeping Structure Deck Shushu at 2, with obviously EX7 Shushu being able to shout your Marissas pretty early by cheating them out, and then Structure Deck Shushu for its security effect to spawn out any Liberator cards when checking security, as well as being an early overclock, with both granting a inheritable that also nerfs the opponent's security Digimon when battling. And the Spotlight for the deck now ends up being the new Promo Shushumon, whose security effect plays itself out, and on play on Digivolve, allows you to spit out a familiar token on the board, thus establishing extra bodies when it comes out. As well, it grants your stack a barrier, which also helps towards the survivability of a stack. And well, to round out level 4 lineup, a definitely spicy tech pick given 2.5's, well, what we got from 2.5, is the by himself, Omekamon from BT20. So, for the most part, this inclusion definitely ends up being a optional pick for most part, since it's a, well, blocker puppet trait that you could also search out, as well has the ability to pretty much spawn out, be able to go into Omni X. More specifically, for the best choice being the BT20 Omni X, which ends up being a good option for the deck, as it means to clear out the opposing side, opposing field. Though obviously it hurts since, well, it ends up being a 5 hard play cost. Though there is some avenues to cheat it out. And for the most part, for tech picks, obviously if you don't want to botch evolution consistency, the alternative ends up being Structured Tobu Catmon, given that it's a jamming body that also grants the barrier inheritable. And that's it for level 4 lineup. Now on to level 5s. And well, this is where we end up playing a little bit into playing ratios as excuse me, as the Chaparomon lineup has slightly been called, bringing Chaparomon EX7 Chaparo to 3 and keeping Structured Chaparo at 2, since for the most part, as always, the EX7 Chaparo being able to, on Digivolve, allow you to spawn out a level 3 body from hand, to go wide, as well as being able to overclock, and Structured X Shapiro being able to DP reduce based off of how many Digimon are on the board. With both obviously being able to grant any stack a protection by pretty much decoying using any puppet trait or token on board as a decoy. And to round out, the level 5 lineup as a new addition ends up being 2 copies of the new Talmon Ace from BT19. Vasseline, as much as it's a war criminal, it still has its uses within yellow strategies, since for the most part, you're seeing this as a means to either, during your turn, play out your single color options for free, or, for the most part, as a defensive option when a Digivolve is on the opponent's turn, to hit one of their opponent's Digimon, one of their Digimon with Sec -1, as well as preventing them from triggering one Digivolving effects. And on top of that, this is an Ace Digimon with an inheritable, which also adds to the deck's ability to DP control, as it's a minus 4,000 when attacking. Obviously, for another option within the deck, good old EX5 Enamon still can be used as a means for DP reduction and attack baiting for your higher end ace plays. Granted that the inheritable tends to be a little bit questionable depending on how you build the deck, following wise. Well, that's it for the level 5 lineup. Now on to level 6s. And well, for the most part, headlining it out ends up being the princess herself, at 4 copies being EX7 Syndromon as your main boss of the deck, as well, being able to spawn out a familiar token on Digivolve and also every start of your main phase ends up making the wider board, as well as the one attacking of my 6,000 as well. And well, to play Fairy Angel for the lineup, I run 2 copies of Digimon Ace for that to also further go wide and be DB control as well. Digimon Ace still sees play, and given that we also have inheribles that reduce DP of security Digimon, opposing security Digimon, having an alliance body in the form of Digimon Ace as well as for their control definitely helps, since the alliance body also puts the opponent on a much more thinner timer. And that's it for the level 6 lineup. And for the level 7 lineup, and well, as obviously mentioned, with the inclusion of BT20 Omega, I end up running 2 copies of BT20 OmniX, the Frenchman himself, as the new Knight in Shining Armor for the deck. Given that, well, to go with the princess theming, Omega turning into OmniX pretty much seems well in line with it, since obviously it ends up being a big body in and of itself, being when it appears to select one body from each side, then everything else, and bot decking and opposing Digimon afterwards. And to follow that up, it has the end of turn effect to allow one of your Digimon, well, granting one of your Digimon rush, and allowing them to attack without suspending, which pretty much plays host, given that for the most part within this deck, you're clearing your whole board and leaving OmniX on board as the only body for the most part. And it pretty much shows, since it also has Raid, Piercing, and Blocker to also help as a very strong body, as you pretty much just rebuild after clearing both sides. That's it for the Digimon lineup. Now on to Tamers. And for the most part, given a little bit of the aspects of the deck, we had to go for a 3-2 split of Structure Deck Orisa and EX7 Orisa to more so lean towards the aggro aspect of the deck, since Structure Deck Orisa, besides being the memory starter of the deck, also allows you to, well, give all of your spawn tokens or puppets rush, allowing them to immediately go headlong into the opponent. While X7 Orisa is the standard memory gain, passive memory gain, being able to recur a little bit by spawning out a token, spawning out a level 3 puppet trait from hand whenever any of your puppet trait or tokens get deleted. Obviously, another option within the card pool that we have is Promo Orisa, being able to, on play, spawn out a Shumon, and be able to practically refund you 1 memory whenever you digivolve up into a puppet trait Digimon. And well, that's it for Tamer lineup. Now on to option lineup. And for the most part, the deck ends up running, again, all utility, being a 2-2-3 split between Vortex Resonance, Yell Scramble, and Physical Training. Since, obviously, Physical Training, being able to search a little, and being able to reduce evolution costs for its delay. Yellow Scramble to reduce evolution cost, and being able to recur pieces during the start of your main phase, as long as the opponent has Digimon on board, and being able to, while you're on the back foot, be able to spawn out a Digimon, and being able to spawn out Digimon when checking security. And Vortex Resonance again, showing up as a means of being a, well, medium of the two, as it both searches and Digivolves that reduce cost of 4. Obviously, for other options, no brainer to include Yellow Members for much more deeper digging and be memory for later. And then Wonder Stomp as another utility option for the deck, being able to practically draw one and cheat out any level 3 puppet trait from hand while paying their cost. Practically just paying them out at 2 cost. And finally, for removal option, Noble Family Arts as a means for a decent memory, well, DP depletion. And that's it for the deck. Now on to the combos. And now going into the combos. Well, starting off, for your mulligan hand, for the most part, as always, you'd want to see your rookies to go into in the back, and obviously seeing Structure Deck Shu as a means to search. Your early searching utilities as usual, to dig for pieces. Ursa to then pair with your Shoes. Since for the most part, especially given that for the most part this runs 5 eggs, you're sort of playing by ear as you constantly build up a stack. Since for the most part, you're just constantly playing around spawning and aggro as you build up a defensible stack, that will always end up being a means to, well, further be means to reduce the opposing DP security Digimon, as well as being able to control the board with DP reductions. With Omegamon and Omni X in hand as a means to clap back while you're running low on security. And, well, to fix up a further mistake in the lineup part, obviously, as I've already went through it, Omega does not have a means to cheat out. So you end up playing the 5 cost as a means to mostly clap back with Omni X. And well, on to the combos otherwise. For the most part, it ends up being pretty straightforward given that, again, you end up going aggro pretty hard within the deck. Since, obviously, Structure Deck in the X7 Shu being means to reduce, and then following that, the X7 in Structure Shu, and then Promo Shu as utilities, while the X7 in Structure Deck variants are means to create a stack that debuffs the opposing security stack, as you pretty much just climb up with other means to then have a high-end body that will constantly be threatening face all the time, as the overclock also allows you to make plays and then pass turn to then overclock by just, well, getting rid of any puppets on board that you don't need anymore, or any of the spawned familiar tokens that are in play. And again, further, you also have a little bit of leeway as well. Obviously, once again, both Aristas have means to enable abilities, well, bodies to be cheated out, and be able to go for face. And to preface again, you also don't have to worry too much, since you also have the off chances of new promo shoe being in security to also establish a body on board pretty early to then springboard up into. Then yeah, for the most part, the main identity of puppets is still the same, as you pretty much just beat down the opponent with a full army of puppets on the march. And well, that's it for my look at the updated puppet deck in the 2.5 update, 2.5 format. And well, that's about it for that. And once again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to help with the algorithm. And we go on to the next day, and this is Cyberjob signing off.